Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And here we are, finally with this Lisa Van Allen testimony that is just so gonna be a mess. Okay, so like I said in my last video, some of you all had requested that I skip over some of the technical type stuff and just do the Lisa Van Allen transcript. So that is what I am here to do. And if you guys haven't had a chance, check out the recap from yesterday's testimony, because Daryl McDavid took the stand, and Daryl is doing pretty good. Okay, but of course he's being questioned by his own attorney. The real test is going to come when those prosecutors get up there and cross-examine him. And then also I had talked to you guys about Jim Derogatis fighting or trying to quash his subpoena to testify. He did win that. The judge says that he doesn't have to testify. And it seems to me that the judge does not seem to grasp the fact that this is not the tape that was shown at the 2008 trial. It's not the tape that was shown at the grand jury in 2002. And so it's really a matter of semantics and how you look at it. So the government is looking at it as it is the same tape. It's depicting the same situation, even though the tape has been copied multiple times. It's still the same content. And that's how the judge is looking at it. But they're not looking at it from the standpoint that this isn't the original tape. So anything could have happened to this tape. Anything could have changed on this tape. And therefore, the tape should be thrown out. And remember, it's multiple tapes now, but we think it's from the same VHS. They've just cut it up. And so they're saying that they have the actual VHS tapes for each one of the charges, each of the 4 videos. But actually we found out they don't have the 4th video, so I don't even know why we're talking about it. So videos 1, 2, and 3, they say they have VHS tapes, which they very well could, but those VHS tapes have been copied. None of this stuff is the original tape per se. And I think that is what a lot of this is going to hinge on. And I just don't feel, and I'm going to say it over and over and over again, I don't feel that Jennifer Bongine, because it's her burden of proof, and Guzman and Brindley, who are McDavid's attorneys, they're trying to help her a little bit in getting this across. And that's why they wanted Jim Derogatis on the stand, but the judge didn't see the connection, and so he approved Derogatis' motion not to have to get on the stand and testify about this tape. So in any event, let's go ahead and jump into Lisa Van Allen, because I think we're going to be here a minute. Okay, so let's just pick up here where they were going back and forth with this judge, and then misjudge. I think I read that, where they were talking about they didn't want to question the prior person. Okay, so the government calls Lisa Van Allen. She's sworn in. The judge, you may examine the witness. Thank you, Your Honor. So Lisa Van Allen, government's witness, sworn in. And so Lisa is going to be examined by Jason Julian, who is the AUSA on this case. And I think he's the lead AUSA. And remember, guys, if I'm asking a question, it's the prosecutor talking. If it's an answer or a statement, it's typically the witness, who in this case is Lisa Van Allen, that's talking. And then if it gets a little confusing to me, then I'll point out, or I think it's going to be confusing, I will point out to you guys who is talking. But otherwise, I'm not going to say Julian, Van Allen, Julian Van Allen. I am just going to read through this. And for those of you who are just joining and who don't know what this is all about, I am reading the transcripts from the Northern District of Illinois, United States versus Robert Kelly, Daryl McDavid, and Milton Brown. Okay, so good morning. Of course, it's jumping today. Good morning. Would you please state and spell your name? Lisa Van Allen, LisaVanAllen. How old are you? 42. What month and year were you born in? June 11th, 1980. Miss Van Allen, do you know a man named Robert Kelly? Yes, I do. Generally speaking, how do you know him? We dated a while ago. You said you dated a while ago? Yes. Is the man you know as Robert Kelly sitting in the courtroom today? Yes. If you could you please? And then Julian, Your Honor, I would ask if you would have everybody drop their mask. Bunjin, we would stipulate that she can identify him. The judge, stipulate she can identify Mr. Kelly? Go ahead. So Lisa. Yes, he's in the Bunjin. We stipulate. Julian, thank you, Miss Van Allen. Now, why Bunjin being mean to this girl? Let's see here. Okay. Okay, then Julian goes back into questioning. And let's see. So he says, thank you, Miss Van Allen. Sorry, no worries. Did you previously testify in a 2008 criminal trial involving Mr. Kelly? Yes. Did you testify against Kelly? Yes, I did. And y'all know she's licking her lips right now, right? So I will ask you some questions, some more questions about that later. But here is what I want to ask you about right now. Did you receive immunity prior to testifying in the 2008 trial? Yes. Ms. Van Allen, if you could, would you please move closer to the microphone? Your last answer was yes. Yes. In your own words, would you tell the jury that you having immunity means to you that I, Bunjin, can I get some more foundation? Are you talking about the 2008 immunity? Then Lisa said yes. And then the judge, that was the question, I think, wasn't it? Mr. Julian, it was. So you could answer the question. I was to testify about my experiences with Mr. Kelly and be truthful about that. I wouldn't have been charged for my participation. You said you had to be truthful. Is that right? Yes. Is that what you are here to do today? Be truthful? Definitely, yes. So y'all know she licked her lips in, because every time she tell a lie, she licking her lips. So I'm having this visual that that's what she's doing right now. So who's your understanding as to who you had immunity back in 2008? From, what do you mean? Any sort of entity, any sort of governmental entity, from being charged by state or federal? Oh, the state of Illinois and the United States. Yes. So now I want to ask you some questions about how you first met Mr. Kelly. So I'm going to go back in time. In what year did you first meet him? 1998. How did you come to meet him in 1998? I attended his video shoot Home Alone in Alpharetta, Georgia. Did you go to that video shoot with anyone? Yes. Who did you go with? Generally speaking, a friend of mine's girlfriend. She was an aspiring singer. Do you remember approximately what month in 1998 that video shoot was in? That was a little blurry for me. I thought that it was in the colder months, because I was cold, but I believe it was later in August or something like that. August of 98? Right. Uh-huh. Okay, she licked her lips, y'all, because she said, uh-huh. Okay, I thought for the longest we done said that this video was done in November. Now she done moved it up to August. Okay, so what, if anything, happened? Could you just tell us how you met Mr. Kelly at the video shoot Home Alone? His cousin Blackie came up to me and told me that his cousin wanted to meet me. And I asked him who was his cousin, and he said R. Kelly. What happened next? He took me in the little golf cart to meet Rob, R. Kelly. Did you meet him? Yes. Did the two of you and Mr. Kelly, have a discussion at that time? Yes. He asked me questions. If I had a boyfriend. He asked me how old I was and would my mother let me come to Chicago. You said he asked you how old you were at the time? Right. Yes. What did you tell him? I said 17. Was that a mistake? Were you being untruthful? Guys, hold on. Somebody's calling me. And I can't get this thing. Okay, sorry about that. I can't put the phone on Do Not Disturb because I'm waiting on a big delivery coming in today. And these people didn't call and tell me what time the delivery was coming. So I got to keep the phone turned on. So I apologize for that. So where were we? Okay. So she said, I was 17. Was that a mistake? Were you being truthful on purpose? Could you just tell the jury why you told him you were 17? At the time, that's what I thought was truthful. You just told us your birthday is in June of 1980. Is that right? Yes. Were you, in fact, 18 on that day? I was. What, if anything, happened after you had this conversation and you said you're 17? He asked me, would my mother let me come to Chicago? And I told him yes. We talked a little more, and then when they had a break, we went to his trailer. So Lisa gonna hold on to the 17-year-old lie. And why would somebody just met you ask you, would your mother let you come to Chicago? Like, okay, anyway. Oh, child. So she said, we talked a little more, and then when they had a break, we went to his trailer. Did anything happen in the trailer? Yes, we had sex. So you met this man 5 seconds ago, and y'all go to his trailer and in the middle of a video shoot and have sex. So y'all remember, I keep telling y'all that Lisa Van Allen was... Okay, I'm going to say she was a sex worker at that time because I keep going back to that interview with Tony Rivera where Charlamagne the God asked her, did she know Lisa Van Allen? And she said yes. And you guys know that Tony Rivera had been sex trafficked. And she met Lisa Van Allen during that time in her life. And she said that her and Lisa Van Allen used to run together. And so Tony Rivera, so she was in prostitution, had been forced into prostitution after meeting this guy while in Atlanta at Freaknik. And it was just a horrible situation. And actually her story was depicted on that show that comes on TV One. I think it's called For My Man. If you guys get a chance to Google that and watch that. And so one of her road dogs, as she was going through this experience, and they were out there recruiting other young women for this guy. She was talking about how they was going into the churches and everything, preying on these young women and bringing them back for this guy. And like, this wasn't a prostitution ring. Like this was some real trafficking going on. Like he was holding them in houses, like in filthy crack house looking things, and he was drugging them and stuff like that. And then once they became loyal, then they were able to go out and then do the recruiting for him and bring back new people for him. And that's exactly what Lisa Van Allen was up to during this time. And that's why it was so easy for her to have sex with this man. And then round the line about her age. So at 18, she was about to get kicked out of this man's situation because she was of no value to him anymore. And she probably was just all worn out and everything. And so that's why it was so easy for her to have sex with this man. So after that, after the two of you had sex in the trailer, what, if anything, happened next? And then also remember, they're in Atlanta. So I think the age of consent in Atlanta is 16. So she really didn't have to lie. So he went back to finish his video shoot. I stayed in the trailer. He came back later. And when the shoot was over, we exchanged phone numbers. I went and caught up with my friend. He asked me to call him later. I called him a month later. So when you say he asked you to call him later, who are you talking about? R. Kelly. You said you called him a month later. Yes. So I'll come back to that in a second, but I want to show you something right now. So Julian, are we in unpublished mode? And then he says, okay, I'm showing you what's already been admitted into evidence as Government Exhibit 104. Do you recognize the person depicted in Government Exhibit 104? Yes. Your Honor, I ask permission to publish this to the jury. It's in evidence. You may. Okay, Miss Van Allen, who's the person depicted in Government's Exhibit 104? Robert Kelly. This depiction of Mr. Kelly that we are looking at in Government's Exhibit 104, does this look about how he looked in 1998 when you met him? Yes. You said you called Mr. Kelly about a month later. Is that right? Yes. And generally speaking, what, if anything, did the two of you discuss when you called him a month later? It wasn't a long conversation. Once he found out who I was, he asked me, when can I come to Chicago? Did you go and see him in Chicago? Yes. Did you make arrangements to go see him in Chicago? He put me in contact with his assistant, June Brown. How do you know that you were speaking? Well, let me ask the question a different way. Did you talk to his assistant, who you just said was June Brown? Yes. How do you know that you were speaking to someone named or referred to as June Brown? He said that's what his name was. He called me. The person, June Brown, called you? Yes. What, if anything, did you and Mr. Brown discuss about these arrangements? That he was to send me money and I was to book my travel arrangements to come to Chicago. Did you, in fact, receive money from Mr. Brown? Yes. Did you make arrangements to go to Chicago? Yes. What happened when you got to Chicago? When I first got there, a limo picked me up, or a car, and took me to the hotel. Once I got to the hotel, I was in contact with June Brown, and he picked me up to go to the studio to see Rob. You said Mr. Brown picked you up? Yes, at the hotel. Is it fair to say that you met Mr. Brown in person? Yes. I will come back to that a bit later, but Mr. Brown picked you up, took you to the hotel, took me to the studio. He took you to a hotel and then you went to the studio. Appington. Objection, Your Honor. She didn't say he took her to the hotel. Okay, wait a minute, y'all. Appington. I'm confused. I thought Appington was one of the prosecutors, but maybe she wanted June Brown's attorneys. I thought she was one of the. Okay, anyway, like how you raising an objection on your team member, but I could be wrong. Okay, so then Julian, he says, I'm just trying to clarify what you said. And so then Lisa said, the limo took me from the airport to the hotel, and then he picked me up from the hotel and took me to the studio. Okay, got it. What, if anything, just generally speaking, happened when you got to the studio? I met with Rob, R. Kelly. First of all, girl, the man name is Robert, so you don't have to keep saying R. Kelly. That is his stage name. She says, and different stuff. Listened to him with his music, talked, eventually had sex. So let me just ask you about that weekend. Generally speaking, or rather, however long you stayed in Chicago, how long did you stay in Chicago on that trip? It wasn't very long because I worked, so it was less than a week. Lisa, did you lick your lips? Because, girl, we know you ain't have no real job, okay? So generally speaking, during this trip, can you tell the jury what sorts of things you did on the trip with Mr. Kelly, if anything? We ate, listened to his music, talked, had sex. That's pretty much it on that trip. Did you go back to Atlanta after visiting Mr. Kelly on this trip? Yes. Did you talk to Mr. Kelly when you got back to Atlanta? Yes. And what, if anything, did the two of you discuss when you got back to Atlanta? Me coming back to Chicago. Did you visit him in Chicago? Him being Mr. Kelly? More than once? Yes. So I want to ask you about, okay, let me ask you the question a different way. Did you eventually move to Chicago? Yes. Approximately how much time passed between that first trip when you came up to Chicago and saw Kelly and you moving to Chicago? Not long. I think I went back maybe a week or so later, and he kept making me miss my flights, kept telling me to hold up, wait, and I told him I couldn't keep missing my flights or I would get fired. And he asked me, what did I make? And I told him, and he ended up just giving me the cash. It was really no big problem. I just stayed. Okay, when you said he, you're talking about Kelly? R. Kelly, yes. Bunjin. I'm going to object. That was non-responsive to the question of how much time elapsed. Julian. I think she answered the question, Your Honor. Bunjin. It was non-responsive. I would like to know the answer. The judge asked the question about how much time elapsed. Julian. I think she said about a week or so. Your Honor, I was going, just in the interest of time, I was going to ask why she moved up, and she answered that as well. Go on to Julian. You mentioned you had this conversation with Mr. Kelly. He didn't want you to go back, and you stayed. Fair? Yes. Are we still talking about 1998? Yes. Where did you live when you moved to Chicago? I would always have hotel room with my things, but for the most part, I was with him in the studio. Do you remember what studio it is when you say you were with him? Chicago Tracks. How many times would you say that you have been to that studio after you moved to Chicago? I can't count. Probably hundreds. I don't know. You said you were with him in the studio. Would you spend the night there? How much time would you spend in the studio? I'm talking about an individual session. Now, when you are seeing Mr. Kelly in the studio, the majority of the time we would be in the studio. Outside of him going to hoops or something like that, we would sleep there. Okay, the problem with this testimony that's really vexing my spirit, 1998, this man was very much married, and I think Drea in 1998, she already had Joanne, and she either was about to have Jay or had already had Jay, depending on when Jay's birthday. But you claiming that you living with him in the doggone studio. Anyway, so the man said, you said you would sleep there. Are there sleeping accommodations in these studios? Yes. The jurors have never been. Can you tell the jury what the studio is like and what these sleeping accommodations are like? Well, in his room, there were sleeping accommodations, beds, like futon beds that would fold up and fold down, or sofas, but they would have some of them. So y'all know Lisa licking her lips in line right now. Every time they got a little indent, that's her licking her lips. Some of them would have bathrooms. His main room, bathroom, TV, refrigerator, microwave, like a studio. So if you were staying at the studio, would you stay there for like a few days at a time, or would it be staying at the studio and going back to the hotel? I would go back periodically just because I wanted to go back, maybe to take a bath in the tub or just to hang out, there by myself or something. But most of the time I was in the studio. When you say go back there, you're talking about going to the hotel, right? When you were staying in hotels, do you know who was paying for the stays? Yes. Were you paying for them? No. Who was paying for them? R. Kelly was. Lisa is still a groupie, y'all, because she keeps referring to this man as R. Kelly when everybody else is referring to him as Robert or Rob, because they feel like they have that personal connection, but she has no personal connection to him. And she's sitting there licking her lips, okay? So were you paying for them? No. So she says R. Kelly was. What was the nature of your relationship with Kelly when you moved to Chicago? Sexual. Would you say you had a romantic relationship? Yes. How often would you say that the two of you saw each other when you moved to Chicago? Daily. You said it was a sexual relationship. How often would you say the two of you were intimate when you moved to Chicago? In the beginning, probably pretty often, maybe a few times a day. A few times a day? In the beginning, yes. What's the beginning? Maybe the first year. Then that changed at some point after that? Yeah, it was still often, but not like a few times a day. It decreased in frequency? Yes. Is there anything, as you sit here now, that stands out to you about the nature of your sexual relationship you had with Mr. Kelly when you were living in Chicago? So, Banjin, I'm going to object to the question. And then the witness, even though Banjin objected, decided to ask him to repeat the question. So then Banjin said it's very vague. And then the judge, well, let's move along. And then Julian, I can ask more leading questions, Judge, if that would speed it up. All right. So Julian, but you ain't supposed to be leading the witness. Now, y'all, okay, keep in mind here, 1998, 1999, that's when Rishona claimed she was having sex hundreds of times with Mr. Kelly. So now Lisa claiming she having sex all these different times. And then when was he sleeping with Drea? And when was he sleeping with all these other women that was coming through? Like DeLeon Sheffield. Remember, she's married to Gary Sheffield, because at some point during all this, the two of them were dating. Okay. And so I think they need DeLeon to come in here and testify, you know, to what was going on with that situation, because one of the tapes that was stolen was of him and DeLeon. So, yeah, it was a lot. Okay, so, Julian, did Kelly say things to you when the two of you were having sex about the sex? What? Yes. Okay, what sort of things did he say to you? What noises to make, what positions to do, how to do them, those things. Sexual, yeah. He was telling you those things? Yeah, he would tell you what to do. That's Lisa. So did he tell you to call him anything in particular while y'all were having sex? Banjin, Judge, I don't. And then Lisa blurts out, Daddy. Then Banjin, I'm going to object to the relevance of this. She was and then the judge, I don't see the relevance either. Banjin, she was an adult woman at the time, at least under the law, so I'm not sure what. And then the judge, is there an objection? Yes. Okay, sustain. Julian, did Kelly videotape the two of you having sex? Yes, most of the time it was when we did threesomes. I'm sorry, what was the answer? Yes. Okay, you said something else. I didn't hear you. Most of the time it was threesomes. Okay, you're saying he videotaped you when you were having threesomes? Yes. Why did prosecutor, he done got flustered and confused, because Lisa sitting up there telling him she was calling R. Kelly daddy, that they was having threesome, and she's sitting there licking her lips. She done messed this man up. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is just gonna be entertaining, I see. So she said yes. And so he didn't videotape when it was just the two of you. Most of the times, yes. Would you say the two of you were in an exclusive relationship? On my end, yes. What do you mean by that? Okay, you saying exclusive like only him and I? Yes, because he would, sleep with other people, and I do threesomes with him if he wanted to. So what were your, okay, girls, so y'all weren't in an exclusive relationship, chica? Come on now. So what were your interactions like with other people, particularly other men, when you and Kelly were together? And then Lisa started to answer the question, but Bunjin jumped in and said, I'm going to object, Your Honor, on relevance. And then Julian, it's extremely relevant, and it'll become obvious. And then the judge said, I don't see the relevance either. Sustain. Julian. Okay, I'll rephrase the question. So were you allowed to speak to other men in Kelly's presence when you, Bunjin, I'm going to object. Julian. Okay, then he kept on and said, were with other men, and then she said no. And then Bunjin, to the relevance of the question, the judge, I don't see the relevance of that. And then Julian, could we have a sidebar, Your Honor? All right. So then they had a sidebar, and the sidebar is redacted. And so we're going to pick back up with Julian and his questioning of Lisa Van Allen. He said, let me ask you the question again. Miss Van Allen, did Kelly allow you to speak to other men in his presence? No. From what you observed, did he allow other men to speak to you in his presence? No. Did he allow you to make eye contact with other men in his presence? No. Did he ever hit you after you moved to Chicago? Yes. If he did, and when he did he tell you why he did it? Yes. Why? Because I didn't listen to Daddy when, if I spoke to someone or laughed at a joke they may have had or something like that. You said that's why he was doing that, because you didn't listen to him. To Daddy, yes. Have you ever visited Kelly at his home? Yes. Which ones? Olympia Fields and the one, what is it, George Street or Washington? What is it? George Street. And she licking her lips. Let me lick my lips, because she about to tell a lie. Okay, I think George Street by the Enterprise. Okay, so I'm going to show you what's marked and what's admitted in evidence as Government's Exhibit 112A. Julian, and I asked to publish this, Your Honor. It's been admitted in evidence. It's in evidence, isn't it? He just told you it was. Yes, Your Honor. Okay, all right. You don't need to ask permission to publish then. Go ahead. Okay, have you ever seen this residence depicted in Government 112A? Yes. Which residence is this? George Street by the Enterprise. Approximately when was the first time that you visited Kelly at this George Street residence? 1998. Okay, how many times would you say that you have been to this George Street residence? Maybe about 10 times. It wasn't a bunch at this house. You said you visited him at a residence in Olympia Fields. Is that right? Yes. Okay, may we unpublish for a moment? Okay, when did you visit Kelly at a residence in Olympia Fields? It was a few years later, because it wasn't built yet then. Maybe around like 2000, something like that. Okay, showing you what's marked as Government's Exhibit 112. Do you see what's depicted in front of you? Government's Exhibit 122, I'm sorry. Yes, what does this appear to be? The Olympia Fields home. You said you first visited him at this residence in about 2000. Yes. Did you visit Mr. Kelly at this residence in 2007? Yes. So based on what you're looking at in Government's Exhibit 122, does it fairly and accurately depict the Olympia Fields residence as it appeared at about 2000 and as it appeared in 2007? Yes. Okay, Your Honor, at this time, I move for the admission of Government's Exhibit 122 into evidence. Any objection? Hearing none, it's admitted. You may publish it. Okay, Ms. Van Allen, earlier you told the jury that you met June Brown in person when you moved to Chicago. Is that right? Yes. How often did you see June Brown after you moved to Chicago? Fairly often. What kind of places would you see or interact with? Would you see June Brown at? The studio, in the vehicles, basketball at hoops, basketball court, things like that. With Rob, in vehicles, yes. What do you mean by that? Sometimes he would pick me up or take me somewhere for Rob or things like that. Okay, Your Honor, I would ask everybody to drop their mask for a moment. Judge, we will stipulate Julian. Okay, Your Honor, I think the defense is going to stipulate that Miss Van Allen can identify Mr. Brown. Yes, the record will so show. Okay, do you know a man named Daryl McDavid? Yes, and generally speaking, how do you know Daryl McDavid? He worked for Rob. Did you meet Daryl McDavid after moving to Chicago and having this relationship with Kelly? Yes. How would you describe the frequency with which you saw McDavid or interacted with McDavid after moving to Chicago? It wasn't very often, but I met him a few times. Sometimes I would go to his place of business and maybe pick up a check or cash or something like that. Okay, have you ever had a conversation with McDavid? Yes. More than one? Yes. Have you ever spoken to McDavid on the telephone? Yes. Is the man you know as Daryl McDavid sitting in the courtroom today? Yes. So, Brinley, Your Honor, we will stipulate that she could identify. Okay, stipulate she can identify the defendant McDavid. Julian, can we unpublish for a moment? Okay, do you know someone, Miss Van Allen, who we are referring to during the trial as Rishona? Yes. How do you know Rishona? Through Rob. We had a threesome. Just one? 3. In approximately what year did you first meet Rishona? 1998. Can you tell the jury about how it was that you first met Rishona? We went to the home on George Street and we were in the, what do you call it? The log cabin room. Me and Rob went in there and then he went upstairs and got Rishona and came back down with her. Okay, before you met Rishona, did Kelly tell you anything about who she was? He said she was his neighbor. Did he tell you how old she was? He said 16. At that time, yes. You said the two of you all met in the log cabin room. Is that right? Yes. May we publish? Okay, now she said Lisa met this man at the end of 1998. So she done had sex with him. She done moved to Chicago. She been staying at the studio. She been staying at the hotel. Now she done made her way to the house. She done met Rishona. She said Rishona was 16, but in 1998, Rishona would have only been 14. It was just a lot going on in a span of a couple of months, according to Lisa. And she done met Rishona before she even met Drea. Like, I'm confused as to what was going on here. Because you done rolled up in this woman's house and... Okay. I guess Drea was locked in the bedroom like Sharon Wimbush said. Nobody knew she was there, even though she had a whole 2-year-old and either a newborn baby or was pregnant with a baby on the way at this point. So he said she was a neighbor. Then she said 16. At that time, yes. So you said the two of you all met in the log cabin room. Is that right? Yes. And who named the room the log cabin room, y'all? Like, did the prosecutors name it the log cabin room, or is that what Kelly actually called the room? I need answers. So, Julian, maybe we publish. Okay, so I'm showing you what's been admitted into evidence as Government Exhibit 112D. What's Exhibit 112D? That is the room that I call the log cabin room. What about 112F? That's the room as well. And 112G, that's it as well. What, if anything, happened after the three of you, Kelly, and Rishona, were in the log cabin room? We had sex, a threesome. Was there a recording device present when the three of you were having sex? Yes. What kind of recording device are we talking about? A camcorder. It was like a tripod. How do you know that there was a camcorder and a tripod present? Because I saw it and Rob put it up. You know, the tripod. He stood it up and put the large camcorder on top. So you saw Kelly doing this? Yes. Was this before or like during the sex? Beforehand? Did you see, while the two of you, or the three of you rather, were having sex, Kelly adjusted his camera in any way? Yes. What ways did you see him do that? Just different ways to make sure, and different angles to make sure, you know, it was right on all of us, the camera. And I apologize for having to ask you this, Miss Van Allen, but could you tell the jury, like, what happened? You said the three of you had sex. What happened during the episode? We had sex. We had oral sex and intercourse. Okay, let's stop here because Rashona, okay, we all know Rashona said it was 15 when she lost her virginity. So y'all having intercourse and all this stuff in 1998 when Rashona would have been 14. So I need Bonjean to harp on this in her closing arguments about these discrepancies in these ages. So he asks, was there anyone telling you what to do during this encounter? Yes. Who was that? Robert. What sorts of things was he telling you to do? Moan louder, kiss, you know, move a certain way. Did you eventually watch a videotape of this sexual encounter? Yes. I will come back to that in a couple of minutes. But you mentioned that there were 3 times that you, Kelly, and Rashona had sex. Is that right? Yes. I want to ask you about the second time. Approximately how much time passed in between this first time in the log cabin and the second time that you, Kelly, and Jane had sex? The second time was probably in 1999. Where were you when it happened? It was like a basketball court. It had the Space Jam pictures in his home. Okay, showing you what's admitted in evidence as Exhibit 112J, what's depicted in 112J. The room that I speak of, the basketball room, the court, and is that at 1010 West George Street? Yes. Is this the room you were talking about? Yes. So what happened in there between the three of you on the basketball court? He put a futon in there from another room and we had a threesome, which would include oral and intercourse. Was this intercourse videotaped? Yes. How do you know that? Because he set up the tripod and the camcorder. You saw it? Yes. What kind of camcorder are we talking about, by the way? Is this something that, from your observations of it, is this something that would take tapes? Yes, the VHS tapes. They are really big tapes that they have like tape in it, I guess. You pop them in it and you push record or play. Is that true as well for the episode you told us about in the log cabin room? The same kind of camcorder? Yes. Okay, did anybody tell you what to do during this particular sexual encounter, the one on the basketball court? Yes, Rob. What, if anything, did he tell you to do? Same thing. Moan, kiss, lay this way, that way, do this. During this particular encounter, did you express any sort of reservations about doing this? Yes. Having sex, what did you express? I started crying. Did Kelly say anything to you about the crying? Yes. What did he say? He said, what was he going to do with this? You know, with me crying in it. What do you mean this? Like, I guess because it wouldn't have been a good footage to watch, you know, if I'm on there crying. Okay, why were you crying? Because I didn't want to do it. Why did you do it? Because he asked me to. You said there was a third time that you, Kelly, and Rashona had sex. Yes. So we are in 99 for the second time, right? Uh-huh. She licked her lips because she lying. Okay, approximately how much time? Bungie, I object to the leading about the dates. That's kind of important here. He just repeated it. Overruled. Go ahead. So, Julian, I think you testified earlier that the second time was in 1999. Yes. Approximately how much time passed in between the second time and this third time that the three of you had sex? I think it was like 2000 because it was at the video shoot. What video shoot? Woman's threat? Okay, what happened at the video shoot? When we went back to the trailer, we had another threesome. Was it videotaped? Yes. Okay, whose idea was this threesome? Okay, can I stop right here? Because I'm just confused how you on a whole video set with people milling around, and we see in the movies how they knock on the trailer door and then just open the door before the person say anything. So he just didn't care if anybody walked in on him video recording this threesome that they had going on. Okay, just crazy. So she said Rob's. And y'all know that she calling him Rob now. So I wonder if they like told her like stop calling him R. Kelly and call him by his name. Okay, so you said it was videotaped. How do you know that it was videotaped? Because he had the tripod and the camcorder. Did you see him set it up? Yes. Was this encounter interrupted in any way? Yes. In what way? His like team came. See, I told y'all. Folks be knocking on them doors. Okay, so she said his like team came in, his publicist Regina Daniels, some people from the video shoot, they came in, so he had Rashona run into the bathroom naked. Kelly asked Rashona to run into the bathroom. Yes. Did he ask you to run into the bathroom? No. I'm going to move forward in time a little bit. So girl, was you just laying there ass butt naked, butterball naked? How Rashona ran into the bathroom that fast when they knocked on the door and just walked in. But anyway. Okay. So he says, I'm going to move forward in time a little bit. The judge, I think we'll take a recess now for 15 minutes. All rise. A brief recess was taken at 11:31 a.m. They had a change in the court reporter. And then they're back, and the court or the judge says, Mr. Julian, are you going to play the tapes? And Julian said, not with this witness. I have very minimal exhibits left, and they'll all be pictures. So court security officer, all rise. Judge, please be seated. Mr. Julian, you may continue your exam. Julian, thank you, Your Honor. Okay, Ms. Van Allen, before we broke, you told the jury that Mr. Kelly would sometimes videotape either you and him having sex or you and other people having sex. Do you know where Kelly kept the tapes he made of you, him and others having sex? In a duffel bag. How do you know that he kept these tapes in a duffel bag? You could hear them shuffling in the bag when he put it down or carry it or walk with it. And then eventually I went in the bag and saw them. How often would you see Kelly carrying around that duffel bag with tapes, either making a noise or a bag that you looked in and saw tapes? Let's see. On his tour bus to Hoops to play basketball. Hoops, is that the name of the gym? Yes. And he played basketball there? Yes. So I want to change gears and kind of come back to Rashona and the things you told the jury about a little bit earlier. After you had sex with Rashona, those 3 times you told us about, without getting into the specifics right now, did Rashona make a statement to you about an upcoming birthday? Yes. Objection, hearsay. It's just a yes or no question at this point, Judge. Then I'll withdraw. Over. Okay. Miss Van Allen, when Rashona made that statement to you, did it have an effect on you? Yes. Banjin, objection, Judge. This is just a backdoor way of getting in hearsay. The statement frankly is, and then the judge, it's not for the truth, presumably. Julian, it's not. Okay, if it's not for the truth, then why say it? And so he told him to go ahead. He overruled Banjin's objection. So you mentioned that the statement had an effect on you. Is that right? Yes. Would you say that's a positive effect or a negative effect? Negative. Did you do something or decline to do something as a result of having heard that statement? I didn't want to have an encounter with her, so yes. Yes? So she licked her lips. What did Jane say that affected you and made you either do something or not do something? Banjine, okay, I think that is now hearsay or calling for a hearsay response. It's not being offered for the truth, Judge. It's not for the truth, so overruled. Effect on her. Okay. If it's not for the truth, why are we allowing it to be said? I don't understand that part. Okay, so Lisa says that she got a PT Cruiser on her 16th birthday. And approximately when was it that Jane made this statement to you? When I say when, I mean about what year was it? About 2000, about 2 years after their first encounter. Okay, why did Rishona saying that she was going to get a PT Cruiser for her 16th birthday have an effect on you? Because I was told that she was 16 prior, 2 years prior to that. And what, if anything, you said you did something or declined to do something as a result of having heard the statement? What was the thing that you either did or did not do as a result of having heard Rishona's statement? I didn't want to do any more threesomes. I didn't want to do the first ones, but I definitely didn't want any more encounters. And why was that? Because she was 14. She had to be 14. Miss Van Allen, do you know a man named Keith Murrell? Yes. How do you know Keith? He was one of Rob's artists. When you say artist, what do you mean by that? He sung in a group called Talent. And when you say he was one of Rob's artists, did you have some sort of understanding as to how he was one of Rob's artists? Yes, he was a singer in the group Talent. Were they assigned this group Talent? Were they assigned to Kelly's record label? Is that what you mean by was one of his artists? I believe so, yes. And when did you first meet Keith? I met him at the hotel room. Which hotel room? Holiday Inn, downtown Chicago. Do you know about when that was? Probably about 99, 2000, something like that. So about 1999, 2000 at a Holiday Inn downtown. Yes. What's the nature of your relationship with Keith Murrell? He was a good friend. Are you still in touch with Keith? Not really. I mean, he's on Facebook, and every now and then he might text me through Messenger or there, but not really. Okay, when was the last time you say you communicated with Keith? A while ago. The last time was, I guess he hit me up about that Chuck stuff. The stuff about, he said Chuck wanted to reach me. And when you say Chuck, who are you talking about? Freeman, Charles Freeman. Okay, Brindley. Your Honor, I'd like to get some foundation, and maybe counsel is going to lay it out as to when this incident is taking place. He says a while ago, but you probably could do better than that. Okay, Miss Van Allen, this incident you're telling the jury about, Keith reaching out to you about Chuck Freeman, when was this? It was about a year ago or something like that, not too long ago, maybe 2 years. And she's licking her lips. And what we're talking about and what you're talking about, having a contact with Keith about Freeman, do you know who reached out to who? Like, did Keith reach out to you about Chuck, or did you reach out to Keith about Chuck? Keith reached out to me. He hit me up on Facebook. And then I went back and told him, asked him, did you think that it was truthful? What he was, what Chuck was saying, things like that. So, wait, let me stop and lick my lips. Okay. So it was kind of like a back and forth thing. But he initiated it, I guess, to let me know that it was Chuck's number calling me because I didn't know who it was. Okay, now, excuse me. Now she going from Facebook message to, he was calling her. But anyway, and this is something a year or two ago you said, right? So I want to come back to 2000, 2001, about the time you first met Keith, or maybe you've known him for a little while at this point. How did you say you were good friends. How did you become friends? They were staying in the same hotel that I had my things at, and periodically I'd go back there and eat because I liked the food that the hotel had. It was more, basic stuff like pizza, wings, things like that. How did you going back to the hotel to eat lead to you and Keith becoming friends? What's his name? Ernest saw me, which is another band member in their group, saw me going to my hotel room, and he knew that I was with Rob, and he knew that we couldn't speak to guys and things like that. So he kept trying to talk to me and say, hey, and things like that. And he kind of thought it was a joke because I really wasn't trying to speak to him. And when I got back to my room, I tried to call Rob to tell him that he kept trying to talk to me, and Rob never came to the phone. So after a while, I just was like, what, to the guys, and we became cool. I met the rest of the group, and I told them that I was ordering food, and they explained to me how they only get like $25 a week, and they'd be hungry, and I would order them food. So you all bonded over food, right? I want to change gears and come back to some things that you told us about a little while ago. Was there ever a time when you were left alone in the studio with tapes that belonged to Kelly? Yes. Where were you? Like, which studio were you in? Chicago Tracks. And where were you when you were left alone with those tapes? In R. Kelly's main room, which was it looked like let me lick my lips, like a studio apartment. It had the sofa, the big screen TV, like the floor models, the refrigerator, the microwave, the bathroom with the shower. Now, this incident, you being left alone with these tapes, do you remember about what year that was in? 2000. Do you remember, excuse me, do you remember about what part of the year? Like, was it early, mid, late? No. Okay. Where were these tapes you say you were left alone with? In the duffel bag. Were you usually left alone with the tapes? No. And what, if anything, happened when you realized you were alone with these tapes? I went in the bag. Why? Just interested in, what all was in there, and if the tapes with me on it were in there. You were looking for the tape of you? Yes. So you're looking through a bag of tapes. Was there some other apparatus in the room, some other thing? Like, did you do something with these tapes you were looking through? Yes, I went through them and would pop them in the VCR, which is, like a big box that you put those VHS tapes into to play them on the television. And I would watch a few seconds of them and forward them, to see if I was on them. And, I saw plenty of them with different women, different girls. I don't know how old they were, but different ladies, people, on them. And I kept looking at them until I found one with me on it. So she sure was in that room by herself a long time. But anyway, why were you looking for a tape with you on it? Because I didn't want him in possession of them. Robert, why not? Because I didn't want to do it, so I didn't want him looking at them or having them in his possession. And when you say it, what do you mean? The threesomes. You were looking for a tape of you having a threesome specifically. Yes. Did you find it? One of them. I just want to ask you some questions about that tape. What do you remember, if anything, viewing on that videotape that was of interest to you? You can take your time. In the first part, it was him and Rashona having, the first scene was him and Rashona, and he kept giving her water so she could pee. And then the second scene was Rashona again, and it was like a bedroom, and she had on some white lingerie. And then the third scene was me and him and her and Rashona. Okay, so I want to ask you about that first scene. You said that it appeared to you that it was Rashona. How do you know it was Rashona on the video? Because I know what she looks like. She looked exactly the same as when we had our threesome, the threesome that was on the tape. Was Rashona on the video by herself? With him? Who is him? Rob R. Kelly. Was it just the two of them on the first two scenes? The last one, I want to ask you, was me? Okay, about this first scene, just talking about the first scene right now, was it just the two of them? Yes. And you said that he was giving her something to drink, water. Do you remember what the setting was, or did you recognize the setting for the first video? Yeah. How did you recognize it? It looked like a living room. It had the checkerboard floor. What color was the checkerboard? Black and white. Okay, had you seen that floor in person before? Yes. And when you say it looked like his living room, which residence are we talking about? Olympia Fields or the 1010 West George Street? 1010 West George. Okay, you talked about seeing that she was drinking some things. Do you remember any things that were like, do you remember hearing the two people, Rashona and Kelly, talking to each other on that first video? Yes. Is there anything that sticks out to you from viewing that first video that you remember one of them saying, if anything? And then she says, I know he would have her drink the water, and then they would talk about her blank, 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 blank. How would you hear saying that? Both of them would say it, but at that time, him. So now I want to ask you about the second video. You said that it was a bedroom and she was in some white lingerie. Okay, let's stick a pin here. So now we're talking about the video where they're talking about the age of her coochie, right? So is that the same video from the 2008 trial that they're talking about here? Because I am so confused right now about all these different videos. Because it seemed like she's talking about a different video at this point than the one that was in the 2008 trial. And if they were actually having this conversation, then he was just dumb as I don't know what. Because first of all, you have to know that you're doing something wrong. And then you're going to sit there and put it on video and then declare on the video about the age, which just makes totally no sense to me. But y'all let me know in the comments. Is the video from the 2008 trial different from the video where they were talking about the age of the coochie? Are these two separate videos? That's what I need help with. Okay, moving on. So he said, who would you hear saying that? Both of them would say it, but at that time, him. So now I want to ask you about the second video. You said that it was a bedroom and she was in some white lingerie. Yes. How did you recognize two people on that video? Because it was the same two people I had the threesome with. Rashona and Kelly? Yes. You said that you got through those two scenes and then you found the video that you were looking for. Is that right? Yes. Okay, so it was still on the same cassette tape, right? So the multiple videos on this one cassette tape, because she's fast forwarding through the video. Okay, so she said yes, and then he said, now earlier you talked to us about an interaction. Well, you talked to us about a few interactions. What was depicted on the third video that you found that was of interest to you? At the end of it, it was us having the threesome in the log cabin room. And again, I'm sorry to ask you this, Miss Van Allen, but what did you remember viewing when you viewed that video of the three of you in the log cabin room? Rob, I, and Rashona having sex and oral in the log cabin room. Okay, who was doing what to whom in that video that you watched? It was all of us having sex and oral and things like that. Do you remember as you watched it, as you reviewed it, receiving an sort of direction that was being directed to someone in that video on that third video? Yeah, yes. Who was the person giving out direction? Rob, R. Kelly. Who were those directions being given to? Earlier you testified that it was you. Was there another person? And then it's redacted. And so I guess she said Roshana. And then she says, oh, sorry. And then she says, Jane and I'm sorry. But we know that Jane is Roshana. So, Julian, Your Honor, could we go to a sidebar briefly? And then Lisa Van Allen apologizes again. So then the proceeding heard at sidebar on record, and then it is redacted out. And then we jump down to Julian, and he says, so I want to set the scene for the jury. You're in a room, you say at Chicago Tracks, going through a bag of tapes. Yes, licking lips, okay. How did you feel going through those tapes? Disgusted. Were you nervous at all? Yes, very. Why? Because, you know, VH tapes are big, loud, noisy, and when I'm popping them in, it takes a while for them to play and rewind. Wait a minute. It takes a while for them to play and rewind them and things like that. And I was afraid that he'd walk in the room before I was finished looking through them to find the one I was looking for. Who is he? Rob, R. Kelly. Why were you afraid that he might walk in the room and see you looking at the tapes? Because I wasn't supposed to be in the bag. I was sneaking. And what, if anything, did you do after you found this tape that was of interest to you? What did you do? I took the tape and went back to my hotel room. Did you keep the tape? No. What did you do with it? I sent it to Keith in Kansas City. Why did you send it to Keith? I wanted to get it out of my possession. Why did you want to get it out of your possession? Because I didn't want Rob, R. Kelly, to find it, to know that I had it. Okay, let's stop there. So my guess is when she met with Keith and the other guy at the hotel, it seemed like it was like the night before or something, but when they met at the hotel and they were talking and whatever, I think this when the plan was probably devised that she was going to go in there and steal those tapes and send it to Keith, and they were going to use the tapes to blackmail Kelly, because keep in mind, Lisa is a scam artist, and she's always been a scam artist. And, you know, she had she grew up rough, was in the care of somebody other than her parents, sent to Minnesota. Not sure how she got her butt back into Atlanta when she was 16 or 17 years old. So then she meets up with Kelly and then just leaves. Like, I don't even understand. And I wish I could remember that guy's name, that the Tony Rivera guy who had her in the trafficking stuff, because I'm wondering if he was a part of all of this, because I'm thinking he didn't just let Lisa go, because when the Tony Rivera chick fled and went back home to wherever she was from, like she was from another state, he went and got her. So I don't believe that he just let Lisa walk away. She had to have been paying him or giving him money, or something else was going on in that situation for her to just up and leave and go to Chicago. And then for him to be a scammer like he is, that for him to know that she was messing with Kelly and all this money, like he had to have been seeing dollar signs. So I wonder if she was somehow getting money and sending the money to him to allow her to stay in Chicago. I just think there's a whole lot more to Miss Van Allen that we probably will never know. So anyway, she's sending it to Keith, and he asked her, why did she send it? She didn't want it. She says, because I didn't want Rob R. Kelly to find it, to know that I had it. And then he says, I want to fast forward, Miss Van Allen. Did you eventually leave Kelly and move away from Chicago? Yes. Approximately what year was that in? 2001. Why did you leave? I was just tired of doing nothing. Really, my life was just frozen. I was doing the same things every day, going to the studio, staying at the vacation home at the time, shopping. Now, child, we done went from the hotel to a vacation home that she ain't even mentioned before. to having sex with him or threesomes, you know, but my life was pretty much on pause. I wasn't succeeding in any way myself. Okay, and where did you go when you left Chicago? Back to Atlanta. So now you're back in Atlanta. You left Mr. Kelly. Did the two of you keep in touch after you left? Yes. About how frequently? At first, regularly. I saw him in July 4th that year. Did Kelly ever leave any of his jewelry around you after seeing him, or did you keep any of his jewelry after you saw him? He left it, yes. And what items of jewelry are we talking about? It was a watch. Was it a Rolex? Yes. Can you tell us about that? He had left it in my hotel room, and he was supposed to come back because we were supposed to go out that night, and he never came back. And the watch was there. I didn't tell him it was there. I assumed he would know, so I never said anything, and he just never asked for it. And it had me kind of baffled, because I was like, how many people is he visiting that he doesn't know where he left it? So where were you when this happened? City and state. Atlanta, Georgia. And do you remember about when that was? 2001. Do you remember being around a cross necklace, or Kelly leaving a cross necklace around you? Yes. Can you tell us about that? I don't remember all the details, but it was pretty much kind of the same situation. Left it around me, didn't bring it up, and I didn't bring it up either. What happened with that cross necklace? I sent it to Keith. And why did you send that to Keith? The same situation. I didn't want it in my possession. So in summary, during this period of time when you moved back to Atlanta, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, did Kelly ever ask you about that videotape that you took from the studio? Not at that point, not up to 2006. The same period of time, 2001 through 2006, did Daryl McDavid ever call you and ask you about that videotape you took from the studio? Not at that time. How about June Brown? The same question, the same period of time. Did June Brown ever call you from 01 to 2006 and ask you about that videotape? No. Did you ever keep a copy of that videotape? I did not have it in my possession. You sent it to Keith? Yes. Did you ever send a copy of that videotape to someone in Atlanta? Only Keith. In Kansas City? Yes. Now, earlier we talked about a guy named Chuck Freeman. I want to ask you about Chuck Freeman briefly. How do you know Chuck Freeman? Through Keith. Now, let me stop here. So, when he left that Rolex watch and when he left that cross necklace, was he testing her? So like he already knew she had stole the tape, and so he was leaving stuff for her to steal just to see if she would ever say anything. Then that would let him know that she had stole the stuff. So I think she knew that she was being set up. So then she says that he asked her, now, you sent it to Keith. Yes. Did you ever send a copy of that video? She says, to someone in Atlanta. She says, only Keith. And then he says, in Kansas City. Yes. Now, earlier we talked about a guy named Chuck Freeman. I want to ask you about Chuck Freeman briefly. How do you know Chuck Freeman? Through Keith. Do you have a relationship with Chuck Freeman independent of Keith? No. Are you friends with Chuck Freeman? I wouldn't call him a friend, maybe an associate through Keith. Would you hang out like in person with Chuck Freeman? No. Did you ever tell Chuck Freeman that a copy of that videotape we've been talking about was with some people down in Atlanta? No. Miss Van Allen, I want to fast forward a few years to 2007 now, and I'm going to ask you about that videotape. In 2007, did you become aware that Keith still had the videotape? Yes. Without relating the specifics of the contents of the conversation, did you have a conversation with Keith in 2007 about the videotape? Yes. Did you learn that videotape might have been for sale? Yes. Based on the conversation? Yes. And after you heard that the video might be for sale, did you say anything to Keith during the conversation about where or to whom that videotape should go to? Yes. To who? I wanted to get it back to Rob. Why did you? And then she says R, and then he say that, and then she said Kelly. So they was cutting each other off for some reason. Why did you say that? I felt like he had the most to lose, so he would help us get it back. What do you mean when you say he had the most to lose? He had an upcoming trial for a similar tape, and on this one, it actually said how old she was. Did you? Okay, so it was two separate tapes. Okay, I get it now. It makes sense now. So it was two separate tapes. So the tape in 2008 wasn't the one where she's talking. Okay. So did you want that tape out there? No. So right now I'm just talking about this conversation you're having with Keith. When you first learned that it was for sale and you said it should go back to Kelly, as a result of that, just during this conversation, did Keith agree during that conversation to give it back to Kelly? No. Did you do anything as a result of hearing that Keith wasn't going to give the tape back to Kelly? Yes. All right. Let me pause here and I'll come back to this thread shortly, but give me 1 second. So counsel is conferring, and then Julian comes back and he says, all right, do you know a man named Yule Brown? Yes, and that's Y-U-L, first name, last name, Brown, B-R-O-W-N. Yes. How did you know Yule Brown? We dated. That's my son's father. At the time of this conversation that you and I were just discussing with Keith, what was the nature of your relationship with Yule Brown? We were dating. Were you ever engaged? Yes. Did you tell Yule Brown about the conversation with Keith? Yes. I didn't know that Lisa had a son. I thought she just had the daughter. So where is the son while his mama out running around ripping the streets and nothing? Anyway, being a con artist. So she says yes, and then he said, why? And she said, because I wanted to get the tape back. Were you planning to reach out to Kelly about this situation involving the videotape? Yes. Did someone beat you to it? Yes. Who? Yule Brown. How did that happen? I had given him, he had asked me previously for Rob's, R. Kelly's number, and I gave it to him. I didn't think he was going to use it. I just gave it to him because I didn't want it to be a problem where he was, wondering why I couldn't give it to him or anything like that. And he ended up calling on his own. I knew nothing about it at that time. Okay, without getting into specifics, generally speaking, how did you find out that that had happened? When I came back into the house, he told me that Yule, reached out. Yes. Again, very high level. You said you were engaged to be married at this point. Did the two of you ever get married? No. Are the two of you still romantically involved? No. Did you speak to Kelly about this videotape situation after Yule Brown reached out to him? Yes, once I had gotten to Chicago. Why did you go to Chicago? He wanted to talk in person about it. And that's what, it's just back up a step. Did you have a conversation with Kelly in Atlanta or wherever you were before coming to Chicago? Yes, but it was really short. Generally speaking, what was the nature of the conversation? We talked and he just said, can you get to Chicago to discuss the video situation? Right, but he didn't want to talk about it over the phone. And just to orient us all, are we still talking about early 2007? Yes. So now I want to ask you about coming to Chicago. You said you came to Chicago. Yes. Okay. When you came to Chicago, did you see Kelly? Yes. And approximately how much time passed between you speaking to him on the phone and coming to Chicago to see him? Not long, maybe a couple days, maybe. Where did you see him when you came to Chicago? Him being Kelly, at his home in Olympia Fields. So guys, I am going to end this here. with a cliffhanger, okay? So y'all can find out in the next video what happened when she got to Chicago. So go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.